Hi, thanks for joining me today and tuning into my YouTube channel. I'm Wilson Bickford, professional artist and art instructor. I've had a tremendous response from YouTube, all you guys out there watching me. I thank you for watching my channel and checking in to see what I've been up to. I've had a lot of requests to do some animals. So I'm going to do a bird today. I paint a lot of animals. I'm an animal lover. And I do a lot of animals, and I do a lot of birds in particular. So I'm going to show you a nice, easy way to do some birds today. But the title of the theme, I should say, of my product line is Fun and Fast Painting. I try to make it fun and fast and as easy as I can for you. So we'll just strip it right down to the nuts and bolts of the whole thing. I'm going to be using some of my signature products today for my oil painting line. I also have a book out through Northlight Books. It's Wildlife Landscapes You Can Paint. It is an acrylic medium, because that's what the publisher requested at the time I was offered the opportunity for the book, but it can be converted to oils. So you'll find that on my website, wilsonbickford.com, and amazon.com, several other places. So if you're interested in animals, you might want to check that out as well. I do a lot of animals. Here's an orca. These are some I've done over the past year or so. Some fish. Eagles are a favorite theme of mine. I really like doing eagles. Horses. I do a little bit of everything. Loons. Pay attention to the loon because he's predominantly black and white. It's going to tie in with the chickadee lesson that I'm going to show you today. So how we're going to do the chickadee, you could approach the loon the same way. Just so you know. An elk. And like I said, specifically I kind of do a lot of birds. This is just my prep canvas for today. I'm going to show you some of my birds actually. Eagles, like I said, are a popular theme. I really enjoy doing those. I did this little penguin. He's going to tie right in with the chickadee and the loon. He's predominantly black and white. So you'll be able to do this penguin very easily just by watching the chickadee lesson today. This lesson is geared more towards, you know, intermediate and advanced skill levels. So it's kind of up the ladder from what I've been showing you. Here's a rose-breasted grosbeak. Cardinals are another favorite theme of mine that I like to do. So, you know, sometimes I underpaint these with acrylic, sometimes I don't. These were underpainted with acrylic like I'm doing today. Only those obviously used red. Now we're getting down to the chickadees. I'm going to show you a chickadee today. This is a different one. I'm not going to put the berries and stuff in today. Different pose. But typical of the type of chickadee paintings that I do. I'm always looking for different themes, maybe on a branch. This one I put him on a cattail. But what I'm going to show you today as far as doing the bird was done exactly the way I'm going to show you today. I just used painted the cattail in with oil, rather than use the branch that I'm going to show you today. And one last one. This one I did on a clothesline, and my wife really liked it, so she claimed this as her own. And she hangs this in the laundry area of our home, next to the washer and dryer. So she really liked that, so this is hers. All right, let's paint, as they say. I'm going to be using some of my signature products today. I'll be using my 1-inch scenery brush, my number 3 fan brush, my number 6 round brush, my number 2 script liner brush, and my small painting knife. Shouldn't need any more than those few tools. Fun and fast, just like I said. As far as paints go, I'm using cobalt blue hue, Van Dyke brown, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and titanium white. It's just a few tools and a few colors is all we need for this. So what I've done so far, I want to show you how I got to this point. If you've seen some of my other videos, you understand this process probably already. I start by putting a sketch on. I'm hoping that's dark enough pencil that you can see that. I drew the chickadee. I found a reference photo of a chickadee that I liked the pose, and I drew it onto the canvas. Once I had done that, I took my number 6 round brush and my liner, and I used some of my black and white gesso, which are acrylic. I painted in all the black areas of the bird, the little toes. I took the black and white and mixed up a neutral gray because I looked at the photo. The tail is a little bit darker gray than the wing. So you pay attention to your reference sketch. I mixed the black and white together for a darker gray here, added a little more white for the lighter gray underneath on the wing. And then I took the liner brush and added little lines to differentiate the separate feathers on the wing, put on the black toes, and just bring it up so it looks like kind of like a black and white photo. All of the detail in the bird is done at this point. All I need to do is add a little bit of glazing and some highlighting on him and some shading at the end, and he's done. So it makes it really easy. After I had gotten to this point, I took regular masking tape. And a lot of people ask me today, do you use a special tape? I really don't. I just go to the hardware store and I get tape, masking tape. I put masking tape on, you'll see the design right through your tape. Don't put it on 3 layers thick. I try to use single layers and just overlap them just enough. There's only 2 layers on there side by side to block that out. Overlap them just enough so that there's no bleed through between the layers. Then I took a small X-Acto craft knife and I trimmed away everything that didn't belong there. I have the bird completely blocked out and a little bit of the branch that he's sitting on. So that allows us to turn loose. I can just drop the background in, peel that off, add a few details on the bird. He'll be done. Fun and fast, just the way we like it. Now I'm going to be using some of my white base medium and some of my clear medium. Today my fast flow white medium is a white base coat we put on that stays wet in the background to blend and get softness in the background where we want it. Now in a squirt bottle, obviously I can't put this on the palette very well. It's going to run all over the place. So I have squirted some of this out prior to the cameras rolling on a paper plate. You at home can just squirt it on your palette if it's laying there beside you. I'm going to take some of this white base coat on my scenery brush, 1-inch scenery brush, and I'm going to scrub in a very thin, even coat over the whole canvas. Now you don't need as much of this as you think. Most people put way too much of this. Scrub in just a little bit. I can see where I'm putting it because I'm getting a glare from the light above here. You'll want to look for dull spots. You don't want any dull spots left. Just scrub it in so the canvas just has a real subtle, soft shine over the whole area. And see, it doesn't take much of that at all. I scrub it in randomly and then I just kind of smooth it out. Ideally, if you can get a fingerprint off it anywhere and everywhere on that canvas, that's all you need of it. If I can touch it and get a fingerprint, that's adequate, more than enough. Okay, this is going to fall together pretty quickly. I'm going to take some cobalt blue hue, which is going to be my sky color, and get a color that you like, a value that you like. I want it a little darker and deeper. Blue is my favorite color, as some of you probably know. If you've painted with me before or heard me go on these videos, I love blue. The thing is, I'm going to paint the sky rather blotchy, so it'll look like I've got cloud movements and some distance and depth in it. His head is going to be nice and black, so I'm going to leave that exposed with white against it, like some white cloud. And I'm not going to do it obviously and just encapsulate it and make it so obvious, but I'm going to leave a little bit of light at his head, which will really make that pop out. Already I'm thinking about the contrasts. You always have to be one step ahead when you're painting and think of what's coming next and do that, get it set up for that on the step prior. So I'm thinking about things already, how everything's going to lay out here. I've painted a million of these little chickadees like this, so I'm not doing anything particular. I'm just kind of making this up. I'm going to put some branches in the background and I'm winging it. You might want to work more closely from a photo if you've not done too many of these. I'm going to take my 1-inch brush now and wipe it off. It looks very coarse and grainy, and it is. I'm going to wipe this off and come back and soften it. And I find it works best if you do little crisscross X strokes like this, or maybe ovals. But just do it lightly, just enough to kind of soften some of the real hard, obvious, grainy brush strokes. It won't take much. You'll see that that'll blend out pretty smoothly, pretty easily. I just don't want to paint it a solid blue. If I paint it solid and flat, it's going to look like the wall. Now, a lot of times I will leave a background like that. It looks very vague and distant. It really brings the bird out three-dimensionally. If you feel you want to add some more, a little bit of detail in the background clouds, I would use a fan brush. And I'll take titanium white, load it up fairly well. And I usually build off the areas that are already there. There's a white area there already looks like a cloud. So rather than stir into all the blue, I stay in those little white patches. And it'll keep the color a little more pure. And so I just kind of take the corner and dab and swirl and scrub it around a little bit. Let the bottoms kind of fade away. I've got a few lessons on YouTube and other places. You'll have to search my name on here to find them. But I have other lessons on here that show you how to do clouds, so I won't labor on these too much. But see, I'm basically just kind of highlighting the tops and letting the bottoms fade away. You got to figure light's coming from above. The clouds are going to be more dominant on the top, more than likely. Unless you got a sunset or a sunrise where the sun's really low in the sky, and then the bottoms of them are illuminated. But we know by the blue sky in this that it's not a sunset, so I'm thinking sun above. So see, it's pretty easy just to come in and fluff a few little clouds in there and really add a little more detail to it. Like I said, I don't want to get too carried away because I want the Chickadee to be the star of this show. If somebody looks at this painting at the end and says, oh, what a beautiful sky, I did something wrong. I want them to notice the Chickadee, not my sky necessarily. It's okay, you know, if they appreciate the sky and they like that too, but I don't want them to think this is a sky painting. It's going to be a Chickadee painting. Okay, I'm going to take my number 6 round brush, and I have a can of paint thinner right here, mineral spirits. I'm going to have to thin my paint down as I go, as I proceed, so I'm going to dip right into this thinner. I'm going to take some Van Dyke brown. I want to put some filler in behind the bird, so it looks like he's on a branch setting forward, but there's other branches in behind him. So it kind of fills up some space. I'm going to take Van Dyke brown, a little bit of the cobalt blue, and some white, which will give me kind of a brownish gray. Now you can use whatever color you want, brown, gray, whatever. I find that really tree branches are more grayish than they are brownish. A lot of people just use brown, but that's probably not the most realistic looking color when you get right down to it. So I want kind of a, if anything, a grayish brown, maybe something like this. And it's just Van Dyke brown, a little bit of the cobalt blue, and some white. And notice I've thinned that down quite thin on this brush. I'm not looking at the branch he's on. I'm hoping you can see that. The branch he's on is right there. I know it's taped out and you might not know where it is. I can see it here easily because I'm close to it. But just so you know, I'm hoping you can see that silhouette of that bird in there and the branch he's on there. I'm not going to work on that branch. I'm going to put branches in behind him. And I want these a little bit softer and a little more vague. I will switch over to my liner brush as they get out here and they get narrower, so I can do the finer work on them. For right now, this number 6 round works pretty good. Keep your paint thinned down a little bit with some of that paint thinner. I'm going to bring one right through so it'll actually be behind him. That'll create an overlap. An overlap will always give you more distance on your canvas, more distance and depth. And maybe I'll put one off this way. I'm really happy to bring you these lessons. Like I said before, I've had so much response and positive responses. I really appreciate that. If you are on Facebook, look me up. We can be friends on there. I post a lot of my new work as it comes out right on Facebook, as well as my class schedules. So I have to take a moment to thank Obsidian Custom Video for doing the filming for me. They do a fantastic job. You'll want to check into those folks too. They do a great job here. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the liner. And I've got the paint really thin, and I'm going to roll that brush right full of paint. And now I can kind of come in and embellish this and get the finer little twigs and stems on here. If your paint doesn't flow freely like that, you just don't have it thin enough. I'm working on a wet background here, so you have to really get your paint thin to make it flow on here. I find in my classes that's what my students struggle with, and I just always really tell them, thin that down a little more. It will make your life easier. I really think, as far as painting animals go, I think that birds are probably the easiest. Like any animal, you got to get the anatomy right. But I think they are by far the easiest animal to start out with. Okay. Like I said, this is going to be background filler. He's going to be sitting on a branch here that's a little closer. So when the time comes, I will make that foreground branch darker. Darker will read as closer. You know you're just itching to try this, aren't you? I know you are. And you can do it. It's not really any harder than what I'm showing you here. If you've never done it, you might have to practice a little bit, especially with these little small strokes that I'm doing here now. But I know you can do it. You have the power within you. Just takes practice. Anybody can learn to paint. It's not so much an inborn talent as it is an acquired skill. You learn it by doing it. Everybody thinks you have to be born with a so-called gift, but you really don't. I really don't think you do. It's my honest opinion. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Just trying to make sure it's uneven and not too balanced. I don't like the way these two top ones come out and they kind of stop. So I'm going to pull this bottom one out a little farther and let that extend off the canvas, maybe over here and off the bottom where this one up here won't. I'm just looking at the composition as I'm doing this, trying to get it so it's a pleasing arrangement of these little twigs and stuff. I travel around and do workshops a lot, so I get a lot of requests where people will ask, well, could you come to Timbuktu and do a class? Could you come here and do a class? Could you come here and do a class? It's not as easy as just showing up with my suitcase and say, here, we're going to paint. If you have a art league or an art association or something in your area that hosts classes, maybe we can work something out. So we just have to have enough students to offset it and make it worthwhile and feasible. So you can contact me through my website for information on that, or through Facebook message. Okay, that's all I'm really going to do for the background. I'm going to take my little sharp knife here to get this tape started, and I'm going to peel my tape off. There's a little black and white chickadee. Remember this stage here that I showed you at the beginning? Well, that's the same thing. He will be under there. So, and he's 90% done at this point. All we need to do is put a little bit of shading and some highlighting on him here and there. He will jump out right off this canvas very three-dimensionally. Now obviously, I'm just showing you a simple lesson here. You could come back in and put pine needles and stuff on here if you wanted to, if it was a different type of tree. So I'm just showing you the basics here, so the lesson doesn't drag on too long that you get bored with it, but this will definitely give you the idea. So like I said, this is kind of geared towards those of you that want to up the ante and get off the beginner level into some intermediate stuff. This is kind of bridging that gap. Okay, now I poured some of my clear medium, my clear glazing medium, onto a plate too, because it comes in a jar and it's not handy to put on the palette. So this is just some of my signature Wilson Bickford clear glazing medium. I'm going to put a thin coat of this using my number 6 round. I'm going to put a clear, nice thin coat of this clear medium over the whole bird. Some of these areas I won't even have to touch, but they're kind of dull because of the acrylic. This will give it a shine like it's been oil painted. But the bottom line is I need something to blend into where I do have to add paint on him. So I need a place, something to blend that away. Because I am going to put a few colors in there. They're more or less going to be glazes. If you're familiar with glazes, they're going to be transparent washes. I hate to use the word wash because that sounds like big and sloppy and like a watercolor wash. You know, big and wet. It's going to be similar. It's going to be transparent but very small and confined, not just spread all over the place. I'm going to say the light's coming from the right in this painting, so that means he needs shading over here on his belly and then the cheek area of his face and the front of his face. I'm going to take some of this clear medium again. I'm just dipping off the plate here. A little bit of that clear medium, a little bit of the cobalt blue, a little touch of the Van Dyke brown. I want something that's kind of a blue-gray and not too dark. I don't want to put white in it. If I put white in it, it's going to be opaque. This is transparent now, it's a glaze. So to lighten that, if it were too dark, I would just simply add more medium to it. It's like watercolor in that if you want to thin it down, you add more water to it, or to lighten it up, I should say. You add more water to it. With this, you add more water to it. I'm going to check my color over here. See what I think. That's kind of close. I want it a little bluer. You know me and my blue. So if I add a little more blue to that, and make sure it stands out against your background sky. And see, I'm going to kind of outline his belly a little bit. You'll see that already he starts looking shaded and he has a three-dimensional feel. Now I'll bring that around gradually and blend it away. Don't have much on here. Notice how very little paint I'm using here. It doesn't take much. It's a glaze. You see, all the detail in the bird's done. If I put some color on him, he's going to be finished. I like to make it as simple as I can and still get a good result. And just like the cardinals I showed you back a while ago. These actually started out, I underpainted them with red acrylic, and this one with kind of a yellow ochre color acrylic. Taped them out, did the background just like I'm showing you here. Pulled the tape off. The dark red was in there, so I just put a mid-tone red and a highlight red. Over here, same thing. I went with lighter yellows and just embellished it. It made it much, much easier. I'm not fighting into so much wet paint. I'm kind of more associated with the wet on wet style of painting, and I do a fair share of that, but where I want more detail, I do a lot of this acrylic underpainting. I get the best of both worlds. Okay, now see how that's adding form and shape to his body? And I'm kind of dabbing it because it leaves a texture within the glaze that looks kind of rough, like feathers. I don't smooth it all out. I'm going to wipe the brush off. And because the whole thing is covered with clear, it gives me something to blend it off into, like I said. That's why I put the clear on there. And I just let it slowly melt away as it goes back across his body, because I want him to have light coming on his back from this side. And I just fine tune it like that. I'm going to take some white. I wiped the brush off. I'm going to take some white. And I'm really going to give him a stronger emphasis of white right here on his back of his neck, if I can get it a little whiter. And then just kind of pounce it over into the glaze and let them mingle together a little. I'm going to swish my brush out and dry it off. Take just a little touch, very little touch of yellow ochre. Look how little paint I've got on that brush, not much at all. These birds tend to have a little bit of a golden area underneath their wing and across their chest a little ways like this. I'm going to add just the slightest little touch of burnt sienna to that, to darken it just a little bit. There we go. And notice I'm wiping the brush off. There's so little paint on there, it's ridiculous. Won't take much. I've done a lot of these birds, so I kind of know where that spot goes. You know, everybody's probably thinking, how do you know where to put that gold? I've got 8 bird feeders or so set up in my yard, and I see these guys every day. And I look at reference photos and I take photos. And I've painted a lot of these little buggers, so I kind of know how they're designed. You'll have to use a reference photo, obviously. I'm going to come back with my liner. And that gray that I had previously, I'm going to take a little bit of that with some white. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. So it's a lighter gray. Now, anytime you're using the liner, you always have to really thin your paint down. So you'll see me reach down, and I've got a thinner bucket down here with mineral spirits in it, just paint thinner. I do have a non-toxic brush cleaner coming out on the market pretty soon. That will be for cleaning brushes, and for actual paint thinner, you're only going to need just a little cup of paint thinner once in a while for a liner brush. Other than that, you won't even have to be exposed to thinner. So those of you who don't like oils because of the thinner, we're working on improving that system. I'm hoping my hand is out of the way here as much as I can get it out of the way. I'm going to put a little extra highlight on some of these individual feathers on the wing and kind of bleed it in towards the front of his body, just to give him a little more emphasis of light. And if you lose the lines you got in there initially, you can go back and find them. I lost those lines just a little bit, the dark. So if I go back in, I just took some cobalt blue and Van Dyke brown and made up a darker value to put the lines back in, so I still got the differentiation. No, I'm kind of hurrying here and faster than what I normally would, just because we're filming. When you're doing this at home, obviously you can take a lot more time with it. That's looking pretty good. One last thing I want to do to him. Now I got to put the branch on. It looks like he's just kind of floating there, but I'm going to put that other branch that he's sitting on. One other thing I want to do is take a bluish tone. I'm going to take blue and a little bit of white. You can gray it with a touch of the Van Dyke if you choose, but I want it definitely look blue, a cooler temperature color. And on the front side of his face, since this is the shadowed side, the rule of thumb for shading black is to use a blue. I'm hoping this is showing up on video. I'm keeping it very subtle, but I'm putting a little bit of a shadowy bluish tone on the front of his face, because that's the shadowed side away from the light. Not sure that's showing for you, but I'm hoping so. I'll lighten it just a little more just in case, so maybe you can see it a little easier. But don't go crazy with it. It can't be too obvious, but it actually lends a little more roundness to his head. It's reflected light, kind of. Bounce light, sometimes it's called. And I'll pull a few little feathers out, jagged, so they're kind of hanging out around the perimeter, so he's not smooth like a bowling ball. Make him a little fuzzy. All right, that's looking pretty good, don't you think? I think so. All right, and he's essentially pretty much done at that point. Like I said, most of the hard work was in the acrylic stage. That's why I do it that way. The loon that I showed you was the same way. You just underpaint it with black and white, paint it black, put all the little white dots on it like a loon has. Downy woodpecker, black and white downy woodpecker, I do the same way. And like I said, if it's a bluebird, I sometimes underpaint it with a darker blue, and I put the lighter blues on top. If it's a cardinal, I underpaint it with red. Every situation is different, obviously, for every bird. Okay, I'm going to take more Van Dyke brown. This was the gray that I had previously up here. I want something a little darker, so I'm going to take blue and brown, cobalt blue and Van Dyke brown, a little bit of white, and I can mix it right into that puddle that I had previously. I just need something a little bit darker. I'll test my color here and see what I think. Okay, the value looks pretty good. I'm going to put just a little touch more brown in it, because I just think it's too close to a dead ringer of the color I have for his tail, so I don't want it to be quite that close. And I'm going to bring in this branch that he's sitting on. Now I've got his toes on there. I'm probably going to lose those. And I knew that when I painted them in there. I will just, if I do, I'll wrap them right back around again. They have a foot that looks like this. They have 3 toes that curl over the front of the branch, and a little thing that would be comparable to our thumb on the back side. So when they're sitting like this, you just see 3 toes wrapped around on each side of the branch. So that's what I've got there. And like I said, you're going to have to work from a good reference photo or study the anatomy of these a little bit to be familiar with that. All right, this is coming together pretty easily. This is a little 8x10 panel that I'm using. It's one of my signature Wilson Bickford canvas panels. They have an MDF core, which means they're not cardboard like most other canvas panels. Canvas panels have gotten a bad rap over the years because a lot of people say they're not durable, and it's because of what they're made of. A lot of them are made of cardboard centers. Mine have an MDF core, which is similar to masonite. They're very rigid, they're warp resistant, and they're archival, which means they should last forever. Now see, if I wipe this brush off and I just dust a little bit of that through there, those black toes will show through. I won't even have to redo them. As long as I don't go real heavy on the paint and scrub a thinner layer, the black will show right through. The black is more dominant than the brown I'm putting on, so it's going to override that. So I can actually still see his toes right through there. So I don't even have, if you have to, you can just put them back in. It's not a big deal. Okay, now we'll come back and highlight that momentarily. While I've got that darker color going, I'm going to take some of the same and I'm going to put some other branches off here, little twigs. And see, make sure they're darker than the ones behind. It pushes those into the background. Anything in the distance will be lighter. It's more prevalent in a landscape where you've got a vast distance across somewhere, but you even want to show it on something like this. It takes the flatness out of your canvas. It makes it look like you have depth within it. Okay, so I'm just thinning this down and just let them overlap right in front of some of those ones in the background. Pushes those right into the distance. I like to highlight my branches with a knife because it gives me a much rougher texture. Looks like bark. Okay, it's looking pretty good, I think. Don't be afraid to give this a shot. I know you can do it. I have an instructional painting packet available on my website that kind of walks you through, that has step by step, and it's kind of showing you the same thing, only that one has pine needles where I've done pine needles and show you how to do those. But these are pretty simple really once you get into them. And like I said before, it's just a matter of putting them in different situations and different themes. This one I did the same thing as I'm showing you today. I underpainted them with black and white. I put the clothesline, I put the clothespins on. All of that was masked out. I came in, I put the background in, peeled the tape off, went back in, touched everything up. And there it was. And this one I just dreamed up. I said sometimes I do them sitting on a fence post. They get set on a stalk of grass. This one I thought maybe I'll put one on a cattail. So I found a reference photo of a cattail even to kind of look at, to go by a little bit. This I just simply painted a green mat on with acrylic paint, taped it off, and I actually painted that mat on there so I could extend his tail and the grass out of the picture and the reed, which gives it a really three-dimensional feel. That's really a popular look with my clients. Okay, I'm going to take my little small knife here and I'm going to take titanium white. This time I'm going to use some of this burnt sienna that I really haven't used much of. I like to brighten my highlights up a little bit, so it's going to be a little touch of brown, just a little bit of that Van Dyke brown, some white, and some burnt sienna, which warms that up. And so I'm going to kind of mix it together like this. I'll wipe the knife off, and then I'll get just a little sliver. Let me show you. Maybe if I can get zoomed in here. I'll take just a little sliver on the top edge of that knife. Hoping you can see that. Don't use much paint. It won't take much. I'm not sure you can see that. There's a little ridge of paint right on the top of that blade. And the light's coming from above, so I'm going to have highlight on the top of this branch, not necessarily on the bottom, of course. So I just kind of lightly, you might even be able to hear my knife scratch right there. Just kind of scrape it on. The knife will deposit the paint in a way that it picks up the little bumps in the weave of the canvas and makes it look rough, which is ideal for showing this bark texture. That's why I like to use the knife. A brush would be a little smoother than what I would want. We'll see how that highlighting on the branch makes it look more three-dimensional. And kind of hit and miss with it. Don't do every little square inch of it along the length. Usually around my subject, I like to make it a little brighter to draw a little more emphasis. So I would take some yellow ochre and more white into that color. It makes it warmer, kind of on the yellowish side of things. I'm thinking sunlight, sunshine, and kind of up near the bird, I make it a little brighter, which draws extra emphasis to him. Leave him dark underneath because he's probably casting a shadow on the branch himself, his body is. And I maybe could come out in front of him a little ways, past that point. But it brings a little extra snap right there. Now, having said all this, I could have, and I still can, if you feel like you want a little bit of highlight, be subtle with it. You can put a little bit on these out here. I'm using less paint, and I'm just kind of rubbing it in a little more. You can give a little subtle highlight on the stuff in the background. Now, you could, obviously, you could do that when you first put the branches in if you know you want it. I usually really downplay the background because the foreground is what you want to stand out. But see, I can come in and add a few more touches to that background too. And I will take my liner again and some of these highlight colors I just used. Some of these branches that I put in with the brush are way too fine to get with the knife. So some of these I do have to come in and use the brush. And I'll lay a little highlight here and there on the tops of some of these skinnier little twiggy branches that I added to that limb. It's all good. All right. I think we just about got a wrap. I have a free online newsletter too that you might be interested in. If you go on my website, there's information on that. You just simply have to contact me with an email or a Facebook message, and in your subject heading just put newsletter. I will take your address and add it to my file. And I have a monthly one that comes out, and it's just little helpful hints and tips that I share. And I post paintings on there, my class schedules on there, updates on my product line. So you might want to check into that as well. All these signature products that I'm showing you today, the Wilson Bickford line, is available at Jerry's Artorama, both at their retail stores and their online catalog and internet. So, okay, I'm going to take some of this blue that I used earlier, and I'm going to put a signature down here. You have to really get your paint down to sign your name. A lot of people ask me, how do you sign your name? This is it right here. I use the liner, get your paint really thin and just roll it full and roll it to a point. And with that, I think we've wrapped this up. I'm hoping this will help you a lot as far as doing birds. Don't be afraid to give it a whirl. It's fun and it's fast. And I know you can do it. So thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you somewhere in my travels, hopefully, and we'll paint. Take care.